Welcome back to another episode of Meet Cute, where we explore the stories of extraordinary people with radical meat-based beliefs. I'm your host, Alex Rhodes. All right, welcome to the show, Butterfueled, Brothers Jay and Anderson. So excited to have you guys on and really excited to kind of dive into your stories of your radical health journey, I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. Thank you for having us. We're really excited to be here and, happy to share anything about our story or any thoughts and crazy opinions we might have of the lifestyle.
That's what we're after. That's what we're after. So let's start with telling everybody, what is your lifestyle, your diet? I know that you're carnivore, correct? But is there anything outside of that you have, or do you plan to be carnivore forever? Is this end game?
No, that's an excellent question, right? Because we talk about it all the time, my brother and I, hey, so, we're doing carnivore. We do beef. We do eggs. We do milk, goat milk. And, are we ever going to eat something else, something outside carnivore? And I think the more we talk about it, the more we believe that animal foods are the foods for humans. Our conviction just continues to grow every day towards more animal-based foods. But yeah, to answer your question, it is carnivore. However, sometimes on the weekends we like to have a little treat, and that treat looks in the form of fruit.
Mm-hmm.
So
big treat, going crazy.
Yeah, it feels like we're wilding out every time.
Yeah.
And extra points if you throw in some honey.
Yeah,
but it's interesting because what we would do before being carnivores, or even when we were starting out as carnivores, is the weekend would come, and we'd be craving that treat. We're kind of used to binging on the weekend. We had that bad habit, is what I mean. Mm-hmm. And we'd go crush a pint of ice cream, something like that, one night. And then it's maybe we'll switch from the Ben & Jerry's to the Halo Top, right? Fewer calories, it's cleaner and whatever. But now we've transitioned ourselves to a place where we have some yogurt and some berries, So compared to where we were a few years ago, it's a big improvement, right?
Yeah.
And just in terms of dietary habits. But when we have that fruit, we don't have a crisis about, oh my God, it's not carnivore. I feel my whole world is falling apart, because the more we dive into the carnivore journey, I honestly think we're going to be eating the way we do right now for the rest of our lives. And I think there's levels to the game as well. So, when you're starting out as a carnivore, it's more eat the meat you can afford, get the ground beef and eggs and everything, right? But I think that as time passes by, we'd like to work ourselves up to a place where, we're just fully supporting local supply chains and just, getting a big freezer, buying whole out cows, learning to hunt, these kind of things. We're just getting more in touch with the food itself. But, you can't make the jump right away, and not being able to be in that position shouldn't hold you back from starting carnivore at all. So, that's the message we try to spread with our page. Starting somewhere is better than not doing anything at all, right? When it comes to carnivore and taking care of your health.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And leads me into another. So, that pretty much for you guys kind of nips the grain fed versus grass fed in the bud. You're whatever you have access to, start. It's better than not starting at all, and then work your way into supporting, your local farmers, and which personally I think is amazing. Not only the idea of supporting local farmers, but it's the idea of that connection with them as well. Over time, you start to develop this relationship with the farmers that you're getting your food from. Have you noticed that? As you've repetitively gone to get your duck eggs, you're hey, what's up, man? This is good.
Yeah. It's not going to lie, it's a bit more effort trying to go pick up every week, the eggs and the milk rather than just, doing it all at once from the supermarket. But it's worth it, and it's just that little extra effort, that little extra time it takes. And the local farmer we go to, she's not like fully regenerative, like, pasture raised and everything, but it's still local, it's still like 15 minutes away. And, I think everyone can do a little bit, wherever they can, do the most you can.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And that's there's something interesting about talking with farmers. It seems like, we like talking with farmer. We like talking with Jan.
She's our local farmer.
Local farmer. And I feel like people also, because we just made a post about white oak pastures, and people, love listening to the farmer, right? So there's something about having that relationship with the person that grows your food that resonates in us. So I think that's something just interesting to, I don't know. I guess we like listening to farmers.
Yeah.
Yeah. You learn a lot. Yeah. Because I don't know a lot about farming or like how you make food. But I think one of the most interesting lessons we had from our local farmer, because she grows mostly like produce, so plant foods. But we're like, whatever you have from an animal, we'll take the whole animal if we can. She's like, oh no, you're not taking my goat.
Give me the duck.
Yeah. I've offered to buy some ducks from her, but she's like, maybe when I have to slaughter one, because she doesn't do that. But anyway, she grows blueberries, so she sold us some blueberries once or twice. It was like this 3 to 4 week period where she had blueberries, but then she was out, and she told us how when she grows these berries, one, she has to protect them from other animals, so just like small creatures and mostly birds. So they get their fair share of the blueberries. By the time she harvests, they've taken their tax.
The animal
you
tax.
Use my land.
Yeah.
Berries.
And then it's a once a year harvest for her. She's got her plants, and then they reap once a year, and it's done, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of showcased just how readily available are these foods actually for humans year round, if you were getting them locally in the right way versus when you go to the supermarket, you see strawberries year round, that kind of thing is just, it's not natural, right? It's not real.
Yeah. Have you noticed yourself starting to kind of, even when you do have a treat, gauge it based on what is readily available to you? You're kind of blueberries are in season right now, so I'll eat some blueberries with my yogurt. Have you started kind of thinking in that way yet?
No. To be honest, no. No, but that it is a realization that we have, that it's so fruit is not readily available year round. We don't have it at probably once a week or once every other week. So we don't really think about what's in season or whatnot. Although that is something that's an excellent point to kind of keep in your head. What's in season in the New England area. What could I get right now? Perhaps apples, and then
apples, yeah.
And then I wouldn't know any further than that.
You're just apples. It's not enough.
Yes. Yeah.
You encourage people to eat carnivore, whether they can do grain-fed or grass-fed.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Yes, some people take the grass-fed maximalist stance.
All or nothing.
Yeah. And that's cool. If you can do that, awesome. But, it creates this barrier to entry, right, for others.
Right.
And to us, the main goal of this movement should be to move the needle as far as possible across as many people as possible. Yeah. So if you're preaching these stances, even though it might be for the right reasons, you're creating these barriers to entry, right?
Yeah.
But, that being said, I did recently learn, not all grass-fed is the same. right? Like sometimes it's just a label slapped on it. Sometimes they're still grain finished. But the real deal, like the highest level you could go, is just like regeneratively grazed animals that are rotated, and being fed like adequate diets in adequate environments. Like the nutrient density of those meats, I believe is just unparalleled to anything else you can get. It's like the real deal. Everything else is it's an approximation of what the real deal is supposed to be. Which is a shame, but
Yeah.
I do think it's important to highlight, like, some farmers are actually doing the effort for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we say, grain fed is okay, it's not to discredit their hard work, their effort, or the quality of their meats, because there's this scientist researcher, Dr. Stefan Van Vliet, who demonstrated that, like, grass fed, like, pasture raised and the whole regeneratively grazed meats actually do contain more nutrients, but they're like these secondary metabolites, like, secondary nutrients that no one really knows what their effect is on health yet, because they're just like they're present in such small quantities. But I think he identified like upwards of like 50,000 different secondary metabolites in these types of foods, which is crazy. Which is actually like, there's just so much more to nutrition than we actually know, and it's just way more than just vitamins and minerals and proteins and fats, right? Like it goes way beyond, and it's just to try to pretend that you have an understanding on all of that, like, it's not real. Like we don't know. No one knows. No one knows what's actually the deal. But I think a lot of it comes down to, if you have the ability to eat local, and like, the whole words, like regeneratively grazed, local, those secondary nutrients. I have a theory.
Give it to me.
Yeah, these secondary nutrients will actually, in a way, would like build up like your immune system towards like the environment. Because people say like things like raw honey are good for like allergies, right? Because you're kind of getting like these plant materials that were like, processed by the animal, and then you're eating them. But I think it would be the same with like if you're doing the meat or the dairy from where the animals are eating, your local environment, like you would actually like build up a tolerance to like, allergies, like these kind of things, you know what I mean? Because like these animals are, again, processing it for you.
I love that idea, because it's like it puts the animals, it's like the animals are already out there working, collecting all the nutrients and turning it into ribeye, and but they're also, as you were pointing out, they're in the environment, dealing with the environment, exposing themselves to all the bacteria and germs, whatever, and kind of building up a tolerance to that, and then you're benefiting from their exposure, by eating them. So
you're like, it's like some people are literally allergic to grass. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, how can that be possible? A human is allergic to grass. You're literally like, so, there's just something there. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I'm just saying, like, I think it's very interesting, and we might learn this in the next 20 years if we're lucky.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes total sense, because if you think about it, and then this is me just spitballing with you for your theory. I mean, if you really think about it, and you grow a cow in your backyard, you know what I mean? That is the exact chemical makeup of what your daily life, like what you interact with on a daily basis is. And so, I mean, that's incredible. I've really never thought about it to that, like, detailed of like that scope, but that's really incredible.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, if you're getting it from the supermarket, you don't know where that cow was raised.
Right.
Especially in the US, you might be getting, there's a chance you might be getting meat from Brazil or something. Because of the
labeling.
Yeah, right? The labeling.
They took away the labeling.
No, I mean, that's a whole thing. All right. Well, we're going to go into a little bit of your story now. So you two were raised in the same household. how were your relationships with food? Like individually, were they different as well? What was your home like? How did they teach you how to eat? What conditioning did they give you around food?
Our household followed like the standard dietary guidelines of low fat,
High fiber.
Yeah, low fat, high fiber, chicken, chicken pretty much 5 days of the week, 6 days of the week.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, but our mother was always like very health conscious.
Yeah.
So, in my lunchbox, I would have like this, we would have cereal for breakfast.
Cereal. Yeah, we would have cereal.
Low fat milk. And then
Uh-huh.
I'd take like a low fat, carton of milk to school, like a sandwich on whole grain, wheat bread, ham and cheese, and like an apple.
Yeah.
But I guess we both had different experiences growing up around food. See, my brother, he's always been like a lean type of person.
Slightly leaner.
Yeah, no, he's always been like a skinny dude.
My sister too. My
Yeah.
sister too. I'm the thick one.
Yeah, but then I always struggled with weight growing up. Like by the time I was in second grade, I was like obese. And I got put for the first time with like an actual like nutritionist on a diet where I could eat anything I wanted. Basically, she was just like, "What foods do you like?" I'm like, "Oh, I like Oreos." She's like, "Okay, we're gonna let you have some Oreos like once a week. What else do you like? Ice cream." She's like, "Okay, you can get ice cream on the weekend." And she just like portion control everything.
Right.
That was what it was. I was having, I actually pulled up my diet from back then, like second grade.
Oh yeah, we found it on an email, right?
And I'm reading the foods I was eating, and I'm like crying for my younger self
Right.
because no nutrition. I was having Cheerios and low fat milk for breakfast.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Right.
You don't know how you survived.
Oh my God.
We survived.
Yeah.
Just
Like you made it through.
made it through
Jeez.
just by the thread of milk.
Yeah, literally, it's just borderline.
The thread of milk.
Yeah, borderline. But so yeah, I've always had that issue, struggling with the weight, and then I lost it, gained it back, growing up, like through my teenage years.
Yeah.
But then my brother, his whole thing has been a weakness for sweets.
Oh yeah.
He's got a very sweet tooth. I have a tooth for everything, but my brother, it's like he'd rather skip. Before he would rather skip a meal and have a dessert than like.
We go out to eat at a restaurant, and sometimes I would just order dessert, right? Order like a piece of cake, and say, I'm just not gonna eat. I'm just gonna have this cake. So yeah, I've always had a weakness for sweet stuff. I mean, still to this day. But that's why we resort to fruits on the weekends to kind of like keep some level of sanity. But yeah, that has been my struggle.
Yeah. Well, Jay, we're going to dive into you in just a second, but I want to know, Anderson, how did it feel to be you in second grade? Like when you came to this realization, or your parents or whoever it was around you that was like, okay, you're obese and we need to like take action against this or to fix it. Do you remember at all what it was like just being a kid and sort of being slapped in the face with like, hey, there's something wrong with you? How did that make you feel as a child? And then how did it affect you growing up as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, luckily I wasn't like necessarily bullied for my weight, which was always a good thing. I get some comments here and there, but that those kind of comments would just really like stick with you.
I was mean to you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he was mean to me.
I was.
He would go out to eat at a restaurant and he'd ask for a dessert, and I'd be like, "Oh, I want a dessert too." He's like, "No, he can't have one." One of the things like my nutritionist told me is like, "Oh, you can have all the diet soda you want in the world." I would literally take it to school. I'd take it like the Diet Sprite or Diet 7-Up. But like none of my other peers would bring like diet sodas to school. It was just me, just be like, yeah, no, I like this. It's good. I definitely felt like different than the other kids. My mother and my brother, they were pretty hard on me. They got me like doing sports and everything. I don't know. Looking back, It was tough. It was tough because I'd see like all my friends who were skinnier than me, they'd be eating like Oreos in their lunchbox. My brother would be eating cake, and none of them would be like as fat as I was. So I didn't understand what was going on. But, the issue was like during the weekend would come. The issue was like my parents were getting divorced, right, in second grade. So then on the weekends, I would go like visit my father, and he would just kind of like let us like binge whatever we wanted. And then my mother would make me like stick to a diet or like eat cleaner, right, which was like low fat and everything. And then I was just a hungry kid all the time. And then the weekend would come with my father, and I'd go all out. We'd go out to the restaurants, we get appetizers, we get the entree and a dessert, and then we get ice cream for the afternoon because I had to get my ice cream in. You know what I mean? But I was just a hungry kid, and then I'd feel like shit. I'd get like stomach sick. I grew up with like respiratory illnesses, going to the doctor all the time. So I also had all these health issues growing up as a kid. Mondays after the binge eating on the weekend, Mondays I would call out from school because I just felt I was just destroyed, like stomach wise and just like lung wise. Like I really had all these issues, and I thought going to the doctor was normal. Many things have changed since I was a kid now, but it's just crazy to think that I actually went through all of that, and I think. To this day, like there was like some disordered eating habits that were developed like during my childhood that still like linger on in the background today. And carnivore to me helps me like really have like a plan of attack on how to deal with these issues.
How to balance the scale.
That's a great question. Yeah, I hadn't had to think about that in a long time.
Yeah, no, it definitely. I think it goes unsaid a lot how much our childhood affects our adult habits, and how we have to reparent ourselves as we grow up, because we've been taught something completely different than what is actually true or like what feels good for us.
Yeah, and have to reparent our parents.
Yes,
who just won't listen. They just don't understand.
Yes, absolutely. But you have to think at one point they were parented. Right. And so our parents, unfortunately, I feel like grew up in that age where they didn't even know what reparenting was. So, like my dad's 60 almost, and he hangs on to almost every conditioned pattern he was ever taught as a kid. And so, they were a hard generation. They're like, no, this is what I know and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
but that's incredible. Did you ever experience... because I think disordered eating is a lot more common than what people give it credit for. Disordered eating is any out of the ordinary relationship with food, feeling that like, oh, I have to eat this, or having intense cravings, more mental than physical, or even still what I would consider, disordered eating, because it's on a spectrum, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of like a word that has a very negative connotation to it, but it could actually mean many things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, so another question to just kind of go a little bit deeper into that is like, do you remember a time? Because usually with disordered eating, we find a lot of like guilt and shame, So on that Monday when you had to call in sick from school, when do you think that you developed sort of this guilt and shame around food? And is that something that you've had to like move past?
Well, no, not really. I've always been a big eater.
Yeah.
So I was always kind of proud of just how much I could eat.
So for example, like if you had that late night, midnight pizza, did you wake up next morning saying, that was so stupid of me?
Oh, yeah.
No, like buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
Buyer's remorse.
No, I certainly go through cycles of that.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell did I just do? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Especially like, in college, like it was in college, it was very present. After a night of drinking, it's late at night, and then you order the pizza or whatever. I'm like, man, I should have just gone to bed. Like, what did I just do?
Right. Like the alcohol wasn't bad enough.
Yeah, exactly. Like that wasn't bad enough. I think definitely yes. Yeah. Just cycles where you feel guilty for what you just did. And then, next day you try to maybe overcorrect for like the next few days. But then here's the issue. The weekend is coming again and nothing else has changed, right? You haven't really changed your perspective on it or like your habits. You're just trying to like make yourself feel better Monday through Wednesday. And then Thursday or Friday comes and it's like, oh, it's Friday.
Yeah.
It's like that mentality. It just sticks with you. It's kind of hard to break out of it. And I feel like many people go through the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's with like drinking or just like binge eating or whatever other, many addictions people are burdened with.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that is super common.
Did you ever feel guilty about having meat? Prior to carnivore, right? Because I'm thinking, because I've been doing carnivore for 4.5 years.
That's a great question.
And I never had a negative view on meat, but whenever I would have meat in front of people, they would be like, "Oh, I'm avoiding red meat because of my cholesterol," something like that. Did you ever kind of think that too?
No, luckily I never fell into like the fear mongering around meat.
Yeah, well, let's take note on the fact that usually when you develop a binge eating disorder, it is primarily focused on highly processed, hyper palatable foods.
Exactly.
It's hardly ever like, oh man, Saturday I nailed a 20-ounce ribeye.
Right. It is now.
Yeah, it definitely is now. And I wake up the next day and I feel great.
Yeah, I feel great.
Yeah.
No guilt, no shame.
No guilt, no shame. Yeah, no, that's dang straight. You mentioned you used to have this mindset going into the weekend, both of you, I'm assuming, because you're treats. And so how did you work on developing a new mindset and shifting into a place where you're making better choices? And then how has that process been for you going from, your previous way of thinking to how you view it now?
It's been a process, that's for sure. And there's been relapses along the way. We're not perfect. And we don't claim to be purists, just to be clear.
Yeah. I would like to be, but I would like to just have this mechanical mentality of, oh, this is just day in, day out, no problem. But yeah, it's just working yourself out of that hole of binge eating. I guess you kind of just start auto fixing or kind of saying, okay, not this weekend. I need something better because I don't want to feel like crap the next day. Kind of like the analogy I would draw right now is kind of like alcohol, right? When you first start having alcohol, you have these Fridays and Saturdays, maybe Thursdays, where you're getting super drunk and then the next day you feel terrible. You repeat that long enough and hopefully you kind of wane off from that, and then suddenly you're drinking less alcohol. And then when you have alcohol again, you're like, yeah, I remember I stopped having it because I just feel so terrible the next day. It kind of happened to me with food as well, because through carnivore, I suddenly realized, I'm actually, I can have a lot of these type of food, beef, and not feel bad. But if I have a lot of these other foods like ice cream or brownies on a different scale, I just feel terrible and don't feel good, feel more swollen or just kind of weak mentally.
Even waking up the next morning and you feel sick. One thing I'll get is I'll wake up with a sore throat, processed sugar, processed junk food, right? I would say it's not really until you go full carnivore, at least for a little bit, where you're able to reestablish that baseline state of health. You were saying hopefully after long enough, someone realizes what they're doing to themselves. But I don't think people realize what they're doing to themselves. I still have many friends who, I go visit them and they're still stuck in this college-like mentality. They know it's not good for them, but, so many people just stuck in that loop. And I think a lot of what motivated us was our fitness journey. We'd be very good with the gym Monday to Friday, but then the weekend comes and it's what? Suddenly we're not going to the gym because we're feeling like crap on the weekend. That doesn't make any sense. The weekend should be when you're going the hardest in the gym because everyone's taking it off. You know what I mean? So one of the tips that really helped me change my mindset about the weekend is, realizing that first of all, you, as good as you are Monday through Friday, let's say, Saturday and Sunday are still 2 days out of 7, right? So that's 28% of a week. right? So in 28%, you can blow all your progress away. I keep telling myself, win the weekend, win the week, right? The weekend is like that final boss fight in the video game, you know what I mean? So like it's the ultimate challenge. You know, most people can be good from Monday to Friday because they're in the routine of their job, but then the weekend comes and now you have free time available. It all goes out the window, right? So, you know, you got to get busy, you got to find things to do that align with your goals. And, you know, in our case, our goal was like, you know, just being able to improve our health and also, you know, go to the gym, build muscle, that kind of thing. And why build muscle? So that we can eat more and stay lean.
Right.
That's the only reason. Yeah.
Basically,
That's the absolute goal.
I want to be able, in 20 years, I want to be able to eat like 5,000 calories and not gain weight. Some people do it. I don't know how. I know I can't. It doesn't work for me.
We're in it to train that metabolism.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So I think, you know, shifting the mindset to that longer term mindset.
Yeah.
Definitely helps.
Yeah.
When it comes to the weekend.
I think carnivore, it brought animal foods to light. Like if we didn't know about carnivore, I think we would still be stuck in this eating salads throughout the week. And then on the weekend, kind of have your beer and ice cream because, you know, red meat is demonized, right? So if red meat is bad for you, what else is out there? What are your options? Chicken breast, broccoli. Honestly, I think that's probably why people still are stuck in that like food cycle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's kind of like we start, right? We have this mental awareness. We're like, oh, this is bad. You know, that's bad. Because our physical bodies have never experienced this essence of good, like feeling good, you know, waking up and being like, actually awake. Do you feel like through carnivore and fitness, you've kind of started to like string the two together and be like, wow, I have to take care of like my physical body and my mental body to kind of make the world go round?
100%.
Yeah. 100%. As you say, that if you don't have like your physical fitness as one of the goals or as an important variable to your quality of life, if you're not taking care of yourself in terms of food, I think you're still gonna get stuck in that negative feedback loop, and you wouldn't be able to break into a positive feedback loop where you improve your food, you improve your physical performance, and through that improvement of physical performance, now you improve how you feel about yourself, and everything feeds positively, propelling you forward.
Probably faster than you can even keep up with.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes we're you can become obsessed with it just by seeing the progress. If it wasn't for carnivore, realizing that, you know, foods that taste good are bad. And I think that's kind of like a somewhat unwritten rule of thumb that everyone carries around. So how would you ever feel okay with having red meat? Because that is like a food that always tastes good 24/7. In a way, it's like people, the current messaging is like your taste buds are deceiving you. You like Oreos, and Oreos are not good for you. So any food that you like is not good for you.
Right.
You should have bland chicken breast. And nothing against chicken breast. I like chicken, right? I'm being mean to chicken, but I love chicken. Yeah, it was carnivore that was able to break that illusion of my taste buds are telling me this is good for me.
Yeah. Well, because carnivore is sort of like all your favorite stuff, you know, red meat, cheese, you know, milk, all the fat, delicious things that you get excited to eat at your meals. But then once you're done, you're satiated.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a huge difference. You know, as a kid who grew up being hungry, I love being able to crush a ribeye and just feel like I feel light, but I feel good, you know.
Right.
It's just, it's different. It's different. It's a different kind of fullness. Yeah. I also went through keto, so I would crush these giant salad bowls, just like ridiculously big. And I'd be like, I'm so zen because I'm eating all this kale. But then I'd be bloated, you know, I'd be like, you know, I'd get that pain in my gut, like kind of get when it's irritated. I'd be like, oh, it's my body cleaning itself. It's like, no, it's your gut telling you like, yo, this is too much.
Yeah.
This is too much, you know, red flag.
Yeah, that bloating thing, I don't know, whether on purpose or not, they're playing games on how your body's symptoms, right? Your body is telling you truth, and that is bloating. And then people are trying to rationalize that bloating into, oh, that's just normal. When, in reality, you can have twice the amount of food in red meat and, have no bloating, feel pretty good, feel lighter.
It's a huge step, realizing, and you really have to see it for yourself. You got to try it for yourself. It's the only way you'll be convinced, because you break through to this place where you realize everything you're told is a lie.
Yeah.
Like, it's every, conventional mainstream standard advice, like what I grew up listening to my doctors tell me and my several nutritionists I had, they messed me up, man. Like, what the heck were they doing? And looking back, I'm like, I cry for my younger self. I wish in second grade, they just told me like, oh, give this kid some liver. And I'd probably be like an inch taller. It's like, that kind of things, it's actually very, very, very sad. And once you see the state of the world today, what the messaging that kids are getting today, it's crazy. They're being taught about fake milk and fake meat and bugs,
bug food.
Like this is literally what's being imprinted in their minds.
Alex, question for you.
Yeah.
How did you wrestle with, the fact of red meat? I think that's something that everyone wrestles with, right? When you realize that it's actually good for you, despite what everyone is telling you it's not.
I'll be honest with you. So a little bit of my background is I was diagnosed at 20 years old with hypothyroidism. I had been vegan for 3 years before that. So I never think that I had hypothyroidism. I think that I just destroyed my metabolism by being vegan. So they put me on medication then, and I went on, I used to bodybuild in the past. I was due to compete in my first show in 2020, and it got canceled. But along that journey, I started realizing that, even though I looked good on the outside, I felt really bad on the inside. And fast forward to 2021, I had a grand mal seizure in the middle of Tulum, Mexico. And it was pretty gnarly.
Sorry to hear that.
No, that's all right. No, that's what started me on my journey to true health. And when I tell you, my partner was with me at the time, and the only thing that I would have her cook for me was red meat and milk. I would drink milk by the gallon and eat ribeye every meal every day. And I did that for probably 6 or 8 months. I craved nothing but red meat and milk. I was just I can't get enough. I can't get enough of it. And and so that's what kind of led me into realizing how good for me it was, and taking away that vegan girl who's like, oh, but I don't want to hurt the cows. I still have a huge heart for animals, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm like,
yeah, absolutely.
Come cuddle with me. Come on. But at the same time, obviously my body was craving that for healing. And that's kind of what led me into changing the stigma in my mind around, red meat, honestly.
How did you know it was red meat and milk that you needed? Is it something you self-discovered or? Well,
I did not want anything else to eat. That's the only thing I could think about, crave. It's the only thing I could eat without feeling, it's what do you want? A steak. I want a steak.
Nice.
Nothing else. Milk.
But without that carnivore, so you didn't know about carnivore, or you probably no, really? Zero.
No.
So it was just pure
intuition.
No, absolutely.
This feels good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Wow.
Yeah. And it still wasn't even until about a year after my seizure, I had slightly let up on the red meat, not too much. I was starting to get back into bodybuilding again, kind of wanting to bring my calories up. And I started sort of eating junk again to just bring my calories up, because I had no idea what else to eat. And of course, hyperpalatable foods in bodybuilding are long lost lovers. You're oh, a Pop-Tart will fill those macros.
Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. Bodybuilding community. Jesus.
It's awful. I can't. I'm sorry, bodybuilders, but I just can't anymore. I'm I look at it and I'm that is so bad. So bad.
Yes.
But yeah, and so after that, it just so happened that I started feeling kind of bad, like a lot worse than I was whenever I was really just drinking milk and eating steak. And I ended up I met a girl I was living in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico at the time, and she was animal based. And I was like, what the hell is that? You know, like, what is animal based? And she's like, oh, I drink raw milk and I eat raw liver. And I was I saw her at a coffee shop. I won't lie. I was sitting there and she was just vibrant. You know what I mean? Like her skin looked incredible. I was just like, that is a healthy woman. And so it was just by chance that she was walking by and I was like, hey, and we just kind of struck up a conversation. And then that's how I actually was introduced into the like animal-based carnivore type space. And then I started eating animal-based, and within 1 week, every time I would take my levothyroxine for my thyroid, I would get like severe anxiety. So I had to completely stop taking it. So I went from, medication and then 1 weekend completely off of my meds. And I'd been on them for 7 years.
Wow.
So
Wow.
after that, I was a believer.
That's amazing.
Wow. Yeah. So it's unfortunate that it isn't until your health is right there at the line.
Yes.
That you have to say, okay, I'm trying to listen to the science, right? The recommendations, the prescriptions, the medications. Yeah. It's not working. Yeah. My body is saying something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Wow.
My dad and I had a conversation this morning, and I feel like you guys would just enjoy the context of it. But he was kind of asking me, every time I've come home, he's, I cook meat all the time, and, he kind of starts to feel better. So this morning he kind of tiptoed around a conversation. He was like, so, why do you do this? And like, do you think this is sustainable? And, he started kind of letting his thoughts out about, he's like, I just look at his mom and dad and like how they get around and they live half a life, and he's like, do you think that you're going to die early because of this? And like, but do you live a better quality of life? And I was like, Dad, look, if I died at 50 and I felt like I feel now all the time, I would rather live that life than be 90 years old. And, doctors keeping me alive with medication that, makes me feel 20%. What kind of life is that? The last 10 years just being miserable and bedridden and, and so just a really interesting conversation. But, this is so eye-opening for people, especially when they see people who are generally unhealthy like myself. Even though I lost 100 pounds in high school and I was considered like the healthy, fit girl, still, healthy, fit people don't have seizures.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good conversation, right? Because, is it sustainable? That's always a question. And am I actually shortening my lifespan by eating this? And it's like, look, we don't know. But what I can tell you today is that I feel my best today. Likely, I'm going to feel my best tomorrow.
Right.
And you just add on those days till, hopefully perpetuity for forever, right? We don't know yet.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't make sense that suddenly really strong day after back after back, suddenly one day everything just kind of like crashes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see it happening. There should be some sort of symptom. Sure, you're going to have some days that you're more tired, but it just doesn't make sense to me that you add in those days, you're going to die at 60 or something.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's a very pervasive issue of self-doubt that many face in this community too. I've had some of my buddies I've converted into eating more red meat, and they're like, man, I feel amazing. Like I wake up and I have energy. Like I didn't used to feel this way. I have friends who've been hard gainers for life, start eating more red meat, more eggs. They start packing on mass for the first time. They're like, man, I feel good. I look good. But
it's killing me, right?
Yeah, but is this good for my liver? Like, is this good for my heart? my parents don't seem to agree. Oh, my roommate who eats lots of salad is telling me I should probably watch my cholesterol. They're saying, oh, a little bit of red meat is good once in a while, but not every day. You can't do that every day. You're crazy. Every day? Like, really?
Yeah.
You should at least have some vegetables, right? Some vegetables are good for you. They're what you're missing. But it's crazy, you know. It's so many people are. I wonder just how many people are being held back by these limiting beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Where everyone around you is just an agent for these points of view that demonstrably don't work, by the way. Like, I mean, look at the state of humanity today. Like, you don't have to go that far.
Yeah.
And even better, like, test it out for yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And then am I going to be worried about my heart just because, you know, all my life improved, but my LDL went up?
Yeah.
You know, I'd argue that's a price I'm willing to pay, you know.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's amazing. Some people are just healing chronic conditions that there seems to be no cure for. Like, you got off your meds, and I think, you know, that's the real point of the story here, right? Like, people just removing these limitations on their lives or dependencies on external forces.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, did you have taken thyroid labs and checked everything?
I did back when we were in Europe. So, and everything looked great. You know, I still supplement with a little beef thyroid itself. But I, you know, through my journey of being on meds, I was on Nature-Throid for a while, which is a pig thyroid, but it still goes through the hand of Big Pharma. So I do supplement with a little thyroid and a little adrenal just to continue that healing process. Yeah. But I mean, other than that, like, I've never had so much energy in my life. And I know this is a little bit of a personal thing, but I'm just like off the walls. Like, let's go, you know?
Nice.
Yeah. I love it.
That's interesting because you hear some of the criticisms for the low carb community is that, oh, you're going to tank your thyroid. Or the Ray Peters out there are saying, oh, you need glucose for your thyroid. So kind of curious to hear your take on this, because obviously, you know, you had red meat, milk, you did all these things. You know, obviously it looks, you're improving. You've improved a lot, but not really listening or thinking about glucose as something that could fix your thyroid.
Yeah. So I've heard this as well. And for me personally, I always have, like, even whenever I was going through that phase where all I wanted was, you know, milk and ribeye, you know, I was still in not the right mentality, you know, like, so I would go get a milkshake sometimes, you know, or have some kind of sugar or glucose in all of my stuff. So I did go carnivore strictly for about a month here about 3 months ago. And for me, I don't know if it's a thyroid specific thing, but it didn't work for me at that time. But I think that after, you know, so many years of damage and so many changes in a short period of time, like, I needed to more gradually adjust to the lifestyle that I was living at that time. Right. So, like, going from, you know, 150, 200 grams of carbs, even if it was fruit and honey, to absolutely zero overnight probably won't do anyone's body a whole lot of good. You know, like, taking it a little more gradual is always sort of the best path, you know? So, like, if you eat a standard diet, I would encourage you to maybe eat an ancestral diet. And then once you, like, get an ancestral diet down pat, maybe switch to an animal-based diet, you know, where you're having fruit and honey. And then when you're ready from that, even if they're just like, you know, 1 to 2 week periods of each one into this, like, progression to carnivore. I think for me, my body at that time, I felt great, but there was, you know, like, I had a little bit of, like, my hair started falling out and my nails started to get brittle, which are like classic thyroid symptoms. I mean, I know that it works wonders for chronic illness. Like, there's nothing I can say about carnivore that, like, I would encourage everyone to try it. I'm like, go for it. Just because like at that time I was having, some thyroid issues. I feel better at about the like 60 to 100 grams of carbs range. I'm still extremely low carb, even now. And truly, I would be closer to carnivore than I am animal based, I think. Because if you were to cut out my fruit, I'm carnivore, period.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, I feel great. I just don't fall into that like keto carnivore. So, and there are some days I'm completely carnivore. It just didn't work for me at that period. But now, I mean,
No, that's great to hear. And obviously there's no right formula. At the end of the day, your body's telling you what it needs. We do hear from people that, they're worried about their thyroid. We always want to learn more, right? Could there be a situation where, some carbs are good for you?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, if you have all these symptoms, we're not gonna repeat the mistake of, hey, no, this is the food for you.
Yeah.
We're right. We don't want to prescribe, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's important to highlight, as good or as powerful as the carnivore diet is, not everyone needs to be a carnivore. Mm-hmm. And also, we don't want to create a carnivore echo chamber either. So we try to highlight our messaging more just around like the importance of animal foods, right? Because it's going to depend on the individual, And I think the issue across like the general population is we're not eating enough meat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you just double down, maybe triple down on the protein you're having, many people would significantly improve their health without having to cut out any of the other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's one of the main takeaways. Meat is not the destroyer of worlds.
Yeah.
Like they make it seem.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Huge game changer. The real game changer.
The real game changer. So, Jay, as I understand it, you didn't really, you were fit all through childhood, right? Adolescence. I hear it was the cardio for you. And you kind of started, like shifting your mindset once you were like, oh crap, this cardio is not working.
Yeah. I used to do a lot of sports, growing up, swimming, basketball. We even did kickboxing for a little period. So I was all about burning calories. Mm-hmm. That was me. I think I weighed 150 pounds, and I started doing rowing. And rowing it's pretty calorically intensive. However, I got fat just because I don't know, the food choices were just terrible at the cafeteria. Plus all the bad habits that come around with college, with drinking and partying. I was studying. I promise I was studying and getting an education.
That's what we all said.
But yeah, it was at this point where no amount of rowing or cardio would improve my shape. I would just be I would have a better cardio system in me, but still be out of shape. Out of college, I'm no longer doing that rowing, still the same bad habits. Now I'm, actually getting weight, getting fat. As someone who has been leaner or skinnier,
it was noticeable.
It was noticeable. My brother was like, "What's something happened to you? What happened?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had a belly for the first time ever. Like,
goes up and rubs it.
You're soft here. What's up? Obviously, it's this whole like mentality of burning calories doesn't work, because otherwise I would have to, do like 2 hours every day or more just to kind of keep like a skinny frame, which I knew doesn't help build muscle, mm-hmm. right? Because if you want to have muscle, you got to resistance train. So I couldn't run 2 hours and then lift weights for an hour and expect to be in some sort of decent. That's like basically a whole day of working out to have some sort of shape. So, I started fixing my diet. First calories in, calories out, just everything. That's useful because, it's a quantitative form of portioning control. The caveat is suddenly you realize, I can have 2,000 calories today. What can I eat? 2 pints of ice cream. Mm-hmm. And then that's it. Call it a day. And I would do that. and then just feel terrible, feel hungry. So then because of that, because I was feeling hungry, I didn't feel good. I would, actually have some real food, like satisfy that craving. Then it would be keto. I moved on to keto because I heard, fat is more satiating, but it's like I still didn't realize where the true nutrition in my food was. Mm-hmm. I learned all these recipes. Now I was doing all sorts of meals, all the low carb versions of the today's foods. Still feeling hungry, but staying better shape, better body composition. Yeah, it wasn't until I saw Sean Baker on the Joe Rogan podcast where he talked about just having steak. I was like, how does this make any sense? Mm-hmm. How could you just have steak? I don't buy that. So then I continued on being hungry, being in somewhat decent shape, much better than before, but not quite there. The carnivore people are saying they don't feel hungry anymore because they focus on filling themselves up with steak. So I'm gonna give that a try. I actually started feeling satisfied. I actually started feeling like there was a deep craving that my whole life I never was able to satisfy. Right? I was trying to satisfy that craving with volume of food instead of quality of food. Obviously, no one does it perfectly in the sense that you don't stick to it. You always fall out and have other foods. Every time I would fall out and have other food, like bread, I would notice my skin would get red right around here. And the funny thing is that it would take like 3 or 4 days after I had that for the symptom to the red skin to show up. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't able to connect that until I went carnivore because I was like, this is the only food that I'm having. My skin improves. I have these other food, and one day I go back to eating that carnivore. I notice why is my skin turning red, like falling off. I made that connection of, my skin doesn't agree with this food. How am I just realizing this now at mid-20 years old?
Yeah, and all along seeing the doctors for it, right? The dermatologists.
Yeah.
And then, there's also another aspect to it because I also grew up with respiratory problems. So when I was a kid, I had an asthma attack. So I had large polyps or swollen polyps in my nose. So I had surgery to kind of take those away. It was probably that happened in early 2000s, and then somewhere in like 2017, 2018, before I started carnivore, I was having respiratory problems again. So I went to the ENT,
ear, nose, throat doctor. Yeah.
Ear, nose, throat doctor, and they looked at my nose and they were like, "Oh, there are polyps here. It looks like they grew up. They returned." And I told them, "Hey, but I had the surgery to remove them. What happened?" And they said, "Yeah, the surgery eliminates them, but then over time they just grow back again. Here's a nasal steroid. Here's a medication for you to follow. Come back in like 60 days or something." But yeah, I didn't return in 60 days. I returned like much later, like 6 months afterwards. They looked at my nose again and they were like, "Oh yeah, there's nothing here." I was like, "Wait, what? The polyps, the things that you told me that would persist for my entire lifetime are not here." And they were like, no, they're not there. So I guess what we prescribed worked, and that was it. The doctor's face was just like absolutely neutral. He didn't really care. He was just like, "Oh, I guess it worked." It's just entirely opposite to what he had told me first, which was, this is something you're just gonna have to do for the rest of your life. Mm. How can you say something that you think it's gonna last for your entire life, and then a few months down the line say, "Oh, it's gone, so you're good." And the funny thing is, I wasn't even doing it because I'm so bad at following prescriptions. I'm so bad of like doing the daily nose wash, or the daily medication, spraying your nose. Mm-hmm. I did it for like a week. for that first initial week.
Is that the first time you correlated like carnivore and healing?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Carnivore and healing. It worked for me. You realize that healing aspect. You realize this is the type of food, but then you fall into this other camp of, the science says cholesterol is bad for you. Mm-hmm. Saturated fat is bad for you. It comes from battling your physical health to a more of a mental battle. Why doesn't this agree with what other people are telling me? Mm-hmm. It was that was around those events, it was when I connected those dots of carnivore and healing.
That's incredible. Well, I guess this could kind of be a question for you both. Let's say pre-carnivore, when you think about your personal relationships and like how you showed up, is it different now? Like with this newfound like health and well-being, have you noticed, showing up differently for yourselves?
Well, I show up and I tell them to eat lots of meat now. Now they hate me.
Now they hate me.
I'll tuck their ear off on meat.
Yeah.
It's funny because last weekend, one of my old buddies hit me up. I'm like, yo, let's go to the steakhouse. I know this all-you-can-eat meat place. Like, let's hang out. I was going to give him the whole spiel, right? Because, I hadn't given it to them yet, just to try to get them on board. Not get them on board with the diet, but just, tell them like, this is the way, right?
Yes, this is the way of the future.
This is the way. Yeah. But he was like, his whole thing was like, oh no, I'm going to this party with my friends for Halloween. You should come. Like, oh. So I guess trying to find healthier activities to do with your friends, right? Like friends and family. Now I'm like, oh, let's go out for like a nice meal, and then go for a walk. And just do these outdoor things, right? Whereas before it's just like, oh, let's hit up the bar and then go out to the club. So I guess in that sense, my perspective on that has changed a lot.
How have you handled that like evolution within your relationships?
It's tough, Here's the thing: you realize like not everyone cares about these things. Not everyone cares about taking care of their health. Not everyone has health problems, no matter what they do.
Yes,
or seemingly so, at least for the short term. I mean, not everyone cares about that the all the bad advice that people have been given, and the war and red meat and the farmers, and that they're pushing this agenda, plant-based agenda. Most of my friends don't care.
Yeah.
So it's just like I'm talking to a wall whenever I go preach these things.
Yeah.
So, how do I handle that? Well, that's kind of like what motivated us to start this page, right? We're going to talk to the people that care about it.
Yeah.
And we've met so many amazing, interesting, like-minded people. And it's awesome. I mean, like we're talking to you right now, and otherwise we would have never met you.
You're like, I have so many great internet friends now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if my friends are, every time I see them, it's just going to be like, hey, let's go out, let's get drunk and, do these things, wake up, destroyed the next day. Like, I think some people are just going to be stuck in that loop for years.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, and I mean, it's not my job to save them. You can't save everyone, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
And I don't want to come across as, holier than thou or anything like that, because they're great people too, but it's just not what I want from my life.
I've noticed a huge shift in just like making choices based on what I want for my life. You know what I mean? Instead of like what's going to make me feel good right now. You're 20, I'm 28, I'm from a small town, all of my friends love to drink, they love to party, and I'm like, well, I just have no interest. And so it's like, what do you do now? And it's like, yeah, you go for a walk. Look at the beautiful leaves on the tree.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. Because I guess it's, however you look at it, you just have to find more like-minded individuals that kind of agree with this lifestyle. Otherwise, you're stuck in this weekend partying.
Yeah.
Mode.
Yeah. No, you got to meet people who are like, hey man, you want to come over and sit next to the fire and eat steak with me?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
More wholesome evenings.
Yeah. I think a big thing in the States is we try so hard to be what everybody else wants us to be. And like this causes this deep void inside of us that it's like, okay, I need to reach for alcohol so that I can feel like myself, so that I can authentically express myself, so that I can actually do what I want to do, as opposed to like what I've been taught or conditioned to do or think, right? And so I think alcohol is a huge part of that, because we all want you know, if you're not living in alignment with who you truly are, you always want a release. You know, that energy has to go somewhere. So it's like, where do you put it? You know?
Yeah, into the gym.
That's right.
Squat, lift some heavy weights. You know,
I tell people all the time, I'm like, gym is not just the gym. It's where I maintain my sanity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say I went to, there was a girl in South Africa that I met, and I went over to her house, and she had just like random kind of like musical instruments, like drums and like a little ukulele, like a little flute type thing. And they would just play and dance sober, like at her house, and like just kind of like bang around on the drums. And then if someone messed up, they'd just laugh. You know what I mean? If like somebody was singing off key, it wasn't a big deal. It was just like this. And I remember that was one of the moments where I was like, this makes me feel so intensely uncomfortable because it's not put together. You know what I mean? Because this isn't like, and like that was kind of the start of like this journey of like letting go of like what people like think of me if I do something wrong, or, you know, if it looks bad or if it sounds bad. And so anyways, it was a really awesome experience, but I'm definitely about that. I'm about that drum life.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to try something like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's tough, you know, like when you're with complete strangers, but like think about how bonding that is to like show someone your worst side. You know, like let's say I'm the worst singer on the planet and I just start belting it out, and then we all just laugh together, you know, like that's what life is, I think.
Yeah, that's how you really become familiar with someone, right? When the face mask, right, kind of falls off, you're like, oh, this is you.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, this is us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should rethink how we have set up societies, cities, move away from the city somehow.
Yeah.
What it means to be human.
Yeah.
You know, because I think
What it means to be human.
a big part of what makes a human up, right, is, you know, like the concept of the like mind, body, and spirit. And so I think like by having like the proper nutrition and also like having some sort of like fitness goal or just like physically oriented lifestyle, you know, you're covering your mind and body that way. But then, you know, there's that third element, right, that I feel like is very different for everyone, but it's still real. Like it's still a real element. So many people like don't believe in that third aspect of our existence. But then you start diving into some really interesting stuff, right? Like, you know, what do you actually find fulfilling? And what do you feel your purpose is?
Yeah.
And that kind of just like deeper level stuff, it can get pretty intense.
It can, but imagine having people around you that you're talking to about it all the time. You know, that accepts you for where you are, and like opens up the space to just be like, yeah, where do you want to go? Like, what do you want to do? But like really asking instead of just, you know.
So you're not repeating what society has kind of like put into your head.
I want to climb up the corporate ladder and all these things, right?
Yeah.
Maybe retire when I'm 65.
Yeah. Well, but
That
at
kind of
not warmed up state. Like, let's say we're talking about gathering around a fire and dancing together. And so it's like, if you were to ask me before, when we're complete strangers, you're like, what do you want to do with your life? I'm like, well, I want to be a millionaire.
Right.
All right. But then we start dancing and we're around, we have this community, and now I feel connected to you. And you're like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to touch lives. I want to tell my story. You know, I want to help people pave the way for their future. You know, will that make me $1 million someday? Maybe. But it's like, that's really what drives you. You know, that's like the underneath, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Once you take away the superficiality of things or the material aspect of these things, you realize you can orient your life towards being more pro-human or anti-human in a way. So, and what you're referring to is kind of structuring your life more towards humans, helping human lives, which, you know, with Carnivore, it's how we can help people fix their food, fix their health, a life that's definitely far more meaningful than being a millionaire.
Yeah.
Right. Knowing that someone's quality of life has improved.
Yeah, helping. Well, I do have a question. What are your plans with Butterfield Fitness? Are you coaching one-on-one or what are you doing?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, we're trying to coach people. I think there's a lot of noise in the industry about approachable ways to carnivore and achieving your goal physique. Basically, putting the money where our mouth is, helping people using a carnivore diet or animal based.
Yeah, not necessarily carnivore.
Yeah,
Because, we'll work with you where you're at, and sometimes we think it's better not to jump straight into carnivore.
Yeah.
But when we started the page, we didn't set out to do this. But it's just like after a while, we realized just how much bad advice there is out there, and we get so many people who are like, they're suffering, like they're frustrated, they can't lose the weight, like no matter what they try, they go high protein, they go high fat, they try fasting, and then they work themselves into OMAD, and it's like they gain weight if they have one bite outside of their OMAD, and just people in like really, really tough situations. That's why we decided to like put some skin in the game.
Yeah.
Our goal with that is just to keep growing our coaching business, really, and just being able to help out more people and find more ways to put our knowledge to the benefit of other people.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Until we meet again.